The Hittite kingdom was a neighbor of ancient Egypt, Babylonia, and Assyria, with which it interacted over many centuries. And yet, until the 19th century, absolutely nothing was known about it. There were only mentions of the Hittites in the Old Testament, alongside many other vanished peoples, but that was all. No one could say for sure whether they had ever really existed. When in the early 19th century Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mesopotamian cuneiform were deciphered, new references to the Hittites began to emerge. And finally, after long searches on the territory of present-day Turkey, records were discovered in a previously unknown language that turned out to be Hittite. Although the Hittites had borrowed their writing system from their neighbors, using both hieroglyphs and cuneiform, their inscriptions were nonetheless distinct from the ones already known. At last, in the early 20th century, during excavations on the site of the former Hittite capital Hattusa, an entire royal archive was uncovered, more than 10,000 cuneiform tablets. After this, scholars were finally able to decipher the records. Thus, the history of the Hittite state became known to the world, and today Hattusa is an open-air museum and part of the world's cultural heritage. The heart of the Hittite kingdom lay in the central part of Asia Minor. Hattusa was located 150 kilometers east of present-day Ankara. Throughout its history, the Hittite kingdom was engaged in constant warfare with its neighbors. To the west lay numerous small states and principalities that periodically united in resistance against the Hittites. The greatest threat came from the kingdom of Arzawa, whose capital was in Ephesus. To the north, Hittite lands bordered no other states, but this brought them no peace. The warlike peoples inhabiting those regions, especially the Kaska, regularly launched raids deep into Hittite territory and even succeeded in capturing Hattusa. Despite all this, the primary front on which the Hittites waged war was always the southeastern one. The first reliable references to the Hittites in cuneiform tablets date back to around 1900 BC, when they appear in the records of Assyrian merchants trading in those lands. From these accounts, it can be inferred that the land of the Hittites was divided into several rival city-states. In this struggle, the rulers of the city of Kusar, Pikhana, and his son Anita emerged victorious. The location of this city, like that of many other Hittite cities, remains unknown to this day. These rulers subdued the surrounding cities, though the future capital, Hattusa, put up fierce resistance and was consequently destroyed and cursed. The new state, under Anita's rule, would later form the foundation of the Hittite kingdom.
Inscribe your name upon this tablet and join our legacy.
During the reign of King Hattusili I in the second half of the 17th century BC, the capital was finally established in Hattusa. Under his rule, the Hittite kingdom continued its expansion, now pushing southward through the Taurus Mountains into Syria. The war against the local kingdom of Yamhad was successful, and its capital, Aleppo, fell under Hittite influence. It is known that the next king, Mursili I, destroyed the city. He is also credited with the most famous military triumph of the Hittites. Not content with Syria, Mursili led his army down the Euphrates and captured Babylon. But it seems events were unfolding too rapidly for the young Hittite state, and it was unable to hold on to so many new territories at once. Dynastic strife also took its toll. Due to his military campaigns, Mursili was absent from Hattusa for an extended period, during which time a conspiracy took root. Upon his return from Babylon, the king was assassinated. After that, the Hittite kingdom swiftly fell into decline. The next 4 kings were also assassinated, and neighboring powers wasted no time exploiting the palace intrigues. Babylonia and Syria, which had only just been conquered, broke away almost immediately. From the east, the Hurrian people invaded Hittite territory and advanced all the way to the capital itself. Order was restored only 50 years later, when King Telepinu, who incidentally was a usurper, secured the throne. This stability was due in no small part to a reform of royal succession introduced by the new king. Previously, the ruler had chosen his successor himself. From that point on, and until the end of the Hittite kingdom, the throne was to pass to the king's eldest son. Telepinu chose not to attempt the reconquest of Syria and instead focused entirely on defending the realm from raids coming from the north and east. Telepinu died around 1500 BC, and the following century was once again marked by palace coups and a volatile situation along the borders. The Hittites' military successes in Syria and Babylonia left a lasting impact on the region. The destruction of the kingdom of Yamhad paved the way for the emergence of a new Hurrian state, Mitanni, in Syria, a state that would cause the Hittites considerable trouble. Many small principalities and city-states that had previously been under Hittite control now aligned themselves with the Hurrians. Although the mid-15th century BC is generally regarded as the beginning of the Hittite Empire's golden age, in reality the kingdom was still mired in deep crisis. Only a brief success can be credited to King Tudhaliya II, who managed to recapture Aleppo. But under his successors, the state was literally fighting for its survival. It was during this time that Hattusa was seized and burned by the Kaskians. Nevertheless, Tudhaliya II became the founder of a new ruling dynasty, later the most successful in Hittite history, under which the kingdom would reach the height of its power. King Suppiluliuma, who ascended the throne in the mid-14th century BC, managed to overcome a period of crisis and defeat the kingdom of Mitanni. This victory was achieved in several stages. Before launching a war against such a formidable opponent, Suppiluliuma consolidated his own realm, reclaimed seceded territories, and secured the support of his eastern neighbors. When his first campaign in Syria ended in failure, these alliances proved advantageous. During his second campaign, the Hittite king led his army eastward through the lands of his allies, bypassing Mitanni's main fortifications in Syria, an unexpected move that seems to have caught the enemy off guard. King Tushratta of Mitanni avoided direct confrontation, and the Hittites advanced into Syria, where a number of local rulers switched allegiance to them. In theory, the Hurrians still had the strength to resist, but Tushratta's actions sparked discontent among his inner circle, and soon civil wars broke out in the remaining territories of the kingdom, hastening its collapse. As a result of Mitanni's disintegration, the Hittite Empire under Suppiluliuma reached its peak. Its southern border extended as far as modern-day Lebanon, bringing the Hittites into direct contact with the Egyptians. Relations with Egypt had been going well up to that point. Suppiluliuma commanded such authority that Queen Ankhesenamun of Egypt appealed to him with a request to marry one of his sons. Ankhesenamun was the daughter of Nefertiti and the wife of Tutankhamun, who had died at a very young age. The Hittite king readily agreed, but the Egyptian nobility was evidently opposed to Ankhesenamun's choice, and shortly after his arrival in Egypt, Suppiluliuma's son was killed. Even so, this did not significantly strain relations between the two states. It was only 30 years later, at the beginning of the 13th century BC, when a new dynasty came to power in Egypt, that the Hittites and Egyptians clashed in war. The conflict centered on Syria. The pharaohs of the new 19th dynasty sought to reclaim their former influence in the region. In preparation for war against the army of Pharaoh Rameses II, the Hittite king Muwatalli II assembled troops from all allied states. Around 1285 BC, a large-scale battle took place near the Syrian city of Kadesh. The Hittite army in that battle was the largest in the history of their kingdom, estimated at around 3,000 chariots and between 20 and 30,000 infantry. The Egyptians numbered about 20,000, with an additional 1,500 to 2,000 chariots. Neither side managed to deliver a decisive blow in the battle. The Egyptian chariots performed more effectively, inflicting heavy damage on the enemy, but the Hittites managed to even the score thanks to their numerical superiority in infantry. Notably, accounts of the battle have survived in both Egyptian and Hittite versions, with each side claiming victory. Although the outcome on the battlefield was more of a stalemate, the strategic advantage went to the Hittites, as Rameses was forced to halt his campaign of conquest afterward. In the years that followed, the pharaoh made several more attempts to besiege Syrian cities, and though he occasionally succeeded in capturing them, he was unable to hold them for long. The Hittites ultimately retained control of the region, and a peace treaty was signed between the two rulers. This treaty has survived to the present day and is the oldest known peace treaty in recorded history. Just as the earlier destruction of the kingdom of Yamhad by the Hittites had paved the way for the rise of Mitanni, so now the defeat of the Hurrian kingdom opened the road for a new power, Assyria. This state, too, laid claim to the remnants of Mitanni, and above all to Syria. The new confrontation led to a battle on the border, in which the Assyrians emerged victorious. This threatened to escalate into a new war, even more devastating than before, but by that time the Hittite kingdom was already nearing its end. Shortly after the war with Egypt concluded, a fresh wave of migrating peoples surged into Asia Minor from the Balkan Peninsula. The scale of the migration was so vast and it so profoundly altered the political, economic, and cultural landscape that it marked the beginning of a new historical era, the Iron Age. The states of the Eastern Mediterranean that had formed during the Bronze Age either disappeared or fell apart, and this process is referred to as the Bronze Age collapse. So irreversible were the changes to the civilized world. The Hittite kingdom was among the hardest hit by these upheavals. Most of the disintegrated empire's territory fell under the control of new peoples, and in the Taurus region and northern Syria, a number of small states emerged, known as the Neo-Hittite kingdoms. There, for another 4 centuries, the influence of Hittite culture persisted. In particular, Hittite script and Hittite names continued to be used. Hittite mercenaries served in the army of the Kingdom of Israel, and among King Solomon's many wives were Hittite women. In Assyrian chronicles, this entire region continued to be called the land of Hatti, until it was incorporated into the Assyrian Empire in the 8th century BC.
Lend thine ear to my chronicles. Become a patron of our house. Subscribe and be remembered.